Greetings and welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here at Sports 101, we like to expand the conversation and include the history, past, present, as well as things that are happening in the making. We look at sport from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp, and be sure to follow me on social media at Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of SportsZone Chicago shows by following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is a sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show as well as all the other shows. Keep up with breaking sports news, and if you miss a show, don't worry about it. You can listen to a podcast or watch a video via the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago. But more importantly, we need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Tonight, SportsZone Chicago would like to introduce the African-American women in NASCAR. If you look at our title picks right here, you'll see three women that are instrumental in making change in NASCAR, and we'll talk about them later. We have a pit crew driver, first one to do the Daytona 500, a owner, as well as a controversial driver who was blackballed by NASCAR. We will detail all three in tonight's episode. Black women athletes are having a cultural moment across all spectrum of sports in the American landscape. This is obviously reflecting the change in modern society that emphasizes gender parity. In other episodes, we've talked about Title IX and being totally inclusive within the NCAA framework, as well as professional leagues hiring women to do jobs they were not allowed to in the past. Although this level of participation and performance still varies greatly by country and by sport, we know some countries in South America and in Europe still do frown upon women's sports. Sports are generally accepted for women to participate in throughout the world. Women who do play sports face many obstacles today, such as lower pay, less media coverage, and different injuries compared to their male counterparts. Oftentimes in women's basketball, you see the knee injuries due to the body shape of a woman's hips as they go out, and jumping up and down street can cause damage to that and your knees. We saw disenfranchisement this year at the NCAA tournament, where the women's teams lacked the facilities, weight rooms, and support that the men's teams were offered in Indianapolis. Now, while women have conquered the majority of sports in this country, NASCAR is kind of like the last bastion that women are conquering, and that's being broken down now, not only by women, but African-American women. So let's talk about NASCAR for a minute for those who are not familiar. The NASCAR stands for the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. And it's an American auto racing sanctioning and operating company that's best known for stock car racing. Each year, NASCAR sanctions over 1,500 races at 100 different tracks in 48 in the 48 states, as well as in Canada, Mexico, and in Europe. Stock car racing in the United States has its origins during the bootlegging era, which coincided with Prohibition. Prohibition when alcohol was illegal in the United States. During the Prohibition era, drivers ran bootleg whiskey, primarily made in the Appalachian region of the United States. So that would be from West Virginia or Western Pennsylvania, all the way down into South Carolina, basically through the Appalachian mountain range. And the bootleggers, they needed to distribute the moonshine and the other products they were selling. So they typically use small, fast vehicles to evade the police. Oftentimes it might be, one-way roads, not streets. They're unpaved. So people will soup up their cars, their engines, as well as their tires, again, to get rid of the police. The repeal of Prohibition in 1933 dried up some of their business. but many people in the South had developed a taste for moonshine, as well as establishing an independent economic society in these certain backwoods or hollers in various states along the Appalachian mountain range. A number of these drivers continued to run moonshine, but this time, instead of evading not only police, they would evade tax officials or revenue officers that were coming to collect taxes on untaxed goods. And this was one of the main reasons that led a lot of bootleggers to be arrested. The cars continued to improve, and by the late 1940s, races were featuring these cars or were being run for pride and profit in local areas. So the best moonshiner maybe in North Carolina may race against the best moonshiner in Virginia, and just see who had the best car. That afterwards they would celebrate with obviously drinking each other's shine and bragging on that as well. These races were popular entertainment in the backwoods of small country towns in Appalachia and many other rural southern United States, and they were closely associated with the Wilkes County region of North Carolina. Wilkes County is right below, if you're familiar with Western North Carolina, it's in between Charlotte and I will say like Boone. So it's not going up the mountain, but it's kind of right there. So it's kind of in that Piedmont, like right before you get to the top of the mountain, and was known for bootlegging, racism. Remember, a lot of these bootleggers are Scots-Irish people who moved there because they were familiar with the terrain after being displanted from Ireland. They had to move to a certain area in Scotland, henceforth the name Scots-Irish. So when they came to America, they fled to Appalachia, the mountain regions, because that's what they're familiar with, and they could continue their illegal businesses because, again, there was a famine in Ireland, and when they moved to Scotland, it was hard for them to get work. So they, resorted to doing things they can make for themselves to make money, henceforth moonshine. There was a mechanic named William France Sr., who was from D.C., and he moved to the Daytona Beach during the Great Depression to, I guess, make money. And he was a mechanic. So he started working within the stock car circuit at the time, and he saw people were enjoying it. But the drivers oftentimes were victimized, thinking like boxing in its early days or the music industry, where the promoters would leave the event with all the money before the drivers were paid. So they would sign up and say, if you win first place, you get $500, second place, $300, etc. But after the race was over and they got out their cars in the infield, sometimes the promoters would leave. They would make up excuses. And oftentimes it was just a sultry business. So Mr. France came in and he talked with other influential race car drivers at the time, as well as promoters at the Ebony Bar in Daytona Beach, Florida. And at the end of those meetings, they concluded with the formation of NASCAR on February 21st, 1948. The original plans for NASCAR included 3 different divisions. I know there's 3 main divisions now, but originally the divisions were modified, roadster, and strictly stock. The roadster division was quickly abandoned, while the modified division now operates as a NASCAR Wheeling Modified Tour. The first NASCAR strictly stock race was held at the Charlotte Speedway. Now, that's not the Charlotte Motor Speedway that we know today. That's infamous. If you're ever in Charlotte during a NASCAR race, just sit still, because if you get on the highway, you'll be stuck 3 hours. The Charlotte Motor Speedway now is one of the NASCAR's main tracks, but the first Charlotte Speedway was a little smaller, and it was for the up-and-coming, NASCAR, because it just started, and the stock cars were still evolving to what we have now. So basically, a stock car is basically taking like a Chevy or a Ford or Toyota or anything, and you're stripping it down to just the bare parts or the stock that it needs to run, which is an engine and things like that, so it can go faster. A driver cage is then put into the car, and after the Dale Earnhardt incident, now they have to wear Vaughn's devices, where it's a device they put around their neck and it clips to the car, so it prevents whiplash. And in the case of crash, it stabilizes the neck in hopes of no more tragic deaths. So this race, the first NASCAR race, was held on June 19th, 1949, and won by driver Jim Roper when Glenn Dunaway was disqualified after discovering of his altered rear springs. So at the beginning of NASCAR, they still had the rules that you had today. You could only modify your car to certain specifications. And Mr. Dunaway, altered his rear springs as such that he was able to get more speed by probably making them tighter so the car wouldn't move at the high speeds. But obviously, after you win, your car is inspected, and he was disqualified. Now I want to introduce you to the current NASCAR series. Obviously, NASCAR has three main series right now, and the top series is the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, the Cup Series is the sport's highest level of professional competition, and it's the most popular and profitable of NASCAR series. And we talk about profit, it's not only for the drivers, but the pit crew and everyone associated with the team. The owners usually get $1 million sponsorships to run these cars, and that money just trickles down from the driver to the lowest team member. Since 2001, the Cup Series has consisted of 36 races over 10 months. Now, unlike other sports, NASCAR puts their main race, that Daytona 500, at the beginning of the season versus the middle or the end to start the popularity, because you want to get people coming from the other sports, and obviously you want to attract new fans. The next series they have is the Xfinity Series. Now, the NASCAR Xfinity Series is the second highest level of professional competition in NASCAR, and the most recent series champion was Austin Cindric in 2020. This series has fewer races than the Cup Series, and the prize money is significantly lower. Now, one thing drivers do in this series, because the money is lower, is a number of Cup Series drivers, they race in the Xfinity and Cup Series events on the same weekend. So if you ever go to a NASCAR race, the coup de grace will be the Cup Series will be on Sunday, but they'll maybe have Craftsman's truck on Friday, and then they have Xfinity on Saturday. Now, obviously, the Cup Series on Sunday. So drivers will race in both as a warm-up to the Cup Series, and as well as the tryout and audition for different teams that may need a driver and to gain experience. So if you look at Formula One, how they have F2, the Cup Series is similar to that, where you find oftentimes younger drivers that are just getting in, trying to make their way into the sport and make a name for themselves. So they'll race the Infinity Series in hopes of moving up to the Cup Series. Several drivers not only participated in both in Cup and Busch Nationwide Xfinity events in the same weekend, but they begin to compete in both on a full-time basis. Now, the last series or major series they have is the Camping World Truck Series. Now, the Camping World Truck Series features modified pickup trucks, where the back of the pickup truck is closed in, and again, all the parts are stripped out to the basic stock and is made to the specifications of the Truck Series to get ultimate speed. The Truck Series is known for having veteran drivers. So if you think of maybe the senior PGA Tour, drivers that don't want to face the rigors of the Cup or Xfinity Series, because the Truck Series has lesser races than the latter two. So veteran drivers that still want to race and haven't decided to retire yet, often are seen in the Truck Series. And this has moderate success on levels because some of these drivers, they get in the Truck Series and revitalize their careers, young or old. So this is sort of like, the last stop, or you could say the G League per se. This series was first considered an oddity or senior tour for NASCAR drivers, but gained in popularity because people would like to see the trucks wrecked too. And then when they got the trucks on the track, sometimes, they handle a little differently because they're longer than the cars. So you see more, tail end collisions versus front end collisions because they try to slide past each other and oftentimes catch each other on the tail. Now, the Truck Series has seen drivers move straight to the Cup Series, was skipping the Xfinity Series due to their prowess or a team just wanting to sponsor them. So every driver, it takes multiple things to get to the Cup Series. You have to be sponsorable or marketable by a specific team and have a driving ability. Sometimes drivers are just handled or hired for one, and that one is not driving ability. NASCAR does operate a few more series. They operate the ARCA Menard series, and this is a strictly stock race that was held at Charlotte Speedway, and they started to move it other places. The ARCA Menard series is a racing series that races big touring racetracks and local series racetracks. So think of like an AN1 tour coming to select racetracks across the United States. They primarily use the Midwest because, again, they want different regions to fall in love with NASCAR. So it has a strong foothold in the Southeast part of the United States. They run a race in the Poconos as well as New York. So they now moved the Menard series from North Carolina to the Midwest to gain popularity in the Midwest and increase fans and spectatorship. The main thing NASCAR has done now is they created a drive for diversity. If you look at this picture right here, you'll see the logo for the Drive for Diversity and some of his graduates. As you can look at the picture, you'll see minorities as well as women in the picture. Again, henceforth the name Drive for Diversity. The Drive for Diversity, or D4D program, is a development program instituted by the American Auto Racing League of NASCAR. The program's purpose is to attract minority and female individuals to the sport, primarily as drivers because they're more marketable and the public can see more diversity, but they also want owners, sponsors, and crew members as well. They've attracted some of these this past year. Michael Jordan is now a majority owner in NASCAR. He has attracted Daryl Bubba Wallace from Team Petty Racing to Jordan 23 Racing now. So we have a minority owner and an African-American owner and an African-American driver on one team now. So that's not only good for the Drive for Diversity, but for the sport as well. And also you see other women coming in on pit crews, and we'll discuss them later. So the system is similar to a driver development program where applicants progress through the minor league and regional racing levels to prepare them for a possible shot on one of NASCAR's three main series. I have intimate knowledge of this as one of my fraternity brothers, Terrence Jenkins. Most people know him as Terrence J for 106 in Park. He actually ran the Drive for Diversity when he graduated from college at North Carolina A&T State University. He did an internship there in California one year and then became the managing director. So his job was to bring African-American and Hispanic children to NASCAR races, let them get used to it, the noise, take them in the infield, as well as different events they have throughout the year. A lot of these tracks you can go to and have simulated racing events, or you can drive a car or ride with a driver and experience the G-force going around these curves at about 180 miles per hour. So again, the Drive for Diversity was very big, and it's been going on for quite some time. The program started during the 2004 season by NASCAR marketing executives in order to attract female and non-European fans and drivers to a historically white male-dominated sport. The year before, Joe Gibbs racing. Joe Gibbs is the legendary coach of the Washington Redskins who won a Super Bowl with them. That's actually the first Super Bowl I remember watching, because after that Super Bowl, the Wonder Years came on. And I watched that growing up. So I remember that Super Bowl very well. So Joe Gibbs racing along with former athletes, Reggie White, rest in peace, and Magic Johnson, had a similar program trying to bring minorities into NASCAR. There are several factors that attribute to the absence of African-American and Hispanic men and women in stock car racing. One would be the cost of auto racing and the dependency on sponsorship dollars. Many of the African-American and Hispanic individuals families didn't lack the capital to enter this expensive racing business, and sponsorships were few and far between by companies because companies would like to sponsor an individual that they felt, will fit the company or the company could back. And oftentimes the companies that wanted to spend money on racing didn't want a black or Hispanic face as their logo, because these drivers will be on the front of boxes. They wear the jumpsuit with the company. The company is put on top of the car. So that is very big in regards to sponsorship. And a lot of times these individuals couldn't find sponsorship. A lot of people believe that African American, Hispanic youth were more drawn to stick and ball sports such as basketball, baseball, and football because they were relatively cheap. But in my opinion, it's just exposure. When baseball was the number one sport, blacks and Hispanics played that and then moved to basketball and football. So whatever you're exposed to and you have access to, I think that's what individuals do. One of the key factors that kept people out is the overt racism in the country, and particularly involved with NASCAR. Oftentimes, as I stated earlier, we talked about bootleggers in the South during Prohibition. So that's bootlegging in the early 1900s, 60 years after the Civil War. So a lot of the sentiment of these people is they're very racist. Then the Confederate flag was synonymous with NASCAR. You would see it at events until last year with the news incident with Bubba Wallace, and his speaking out led to NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag. It just so happened the next race, someone rented out a biplane to fly over the racetrack with a Confederate flag hanging from the plane to show solidarity with the individuals that wanted to bring one in. Nowadays, when you go to a NASCAR event, which is most people go for the weekend, you'll still see the flags and the tailgate and camping areas where most people stay the entire weekend, but you're not allowed to bring them into the track anymore. So again, that would be an uncomfortable place where people sit in their campers and drink and fly flags and play music. You would obviously guess that if they saw someone of African American or Hispanic descent in that mindset, they would probably resort to saying some type of slur or epitaph that would, obviously most likely resort to violence. So most people stay away from it. For these reasons, NASCAR has been slower to racially integrate into other major sports in this country. And the first African American driver they had was Wendell Scott, and that was in the 1950s. Give you a brief history about Wendell Scott. Wendell Scott was a bootlegger in the South who broke the color barrier in the 1950s and raced competitively, and he had inferior equipment and subpar support. So oftentimes Wendell Scott was his own mechanic. He was on travel, and he was the driver as well. So he would spend all the money he had just to get to the track and couldn't fix his car. It would meet the specifications, but it would not be built to the quality of all the other cars on the racetrack because he didn't have a team with him, number one, or the resources to do that. So despite all that, he still made trends in NASCAR in the 1950s, and he stopped in the early 1950s, again, to the monetary support not being able to hold sponsors. And as the sport grew into the 60s and 70s and began to place on television, a lot of the drivers that were good enough but couldn't find sponsorship were phased out. The Drive for Diversity, they have a combine every year where they take former athletes. Oftentimes they recruit the historically black colleges and universities, and they invite people to try out for drivers and pit crew. So we have a short video right here. My Jedi Sensei Maya Kai and Greg, my excellent new producer, have put together. So if you could take a minute to watch this, I would really appreciate it. And then we'll talk about it a little bit after it's finished.
If you would have told 24-year-old Brianna Daniels 2 years ago she'd be standing in a pit box, Daytona 500 weekend, ready to change tires in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, she would have thought you were crazy.
I'm telling you, I was never a NASCAR fan. Like, it wasn't even a thought. Like, it was just basketball, track, and that's it.
Back then, basketball was her life. She played point guard at Norfolk State. But when her final season was done, her life took a left turn when a friend suggested she take part in a NASCAR pit crew tryout coming to her school.
And she pulled out her phone and showed me a video of a pit stop. And I was like, dang, they really changed, like, they do stuff that fast, like the whole stop is done that fast. So, Wednesday came around, I found myself not doing anything. I was at the end of my internship, it was the end of basketball season, I really didn't have nothing to do, so I'm like, why not? My coach ended up putting us through a hard workout. It reminded me of like an NFL or NBA combine. It was tough. We were dying. I was dying, like really. I even beat some of the boys I went against, so I was like, I know I did good.
So good, she got invited to the National Drive for Diversity Pit Crew Combine here in Charlotte, where once again, she shined, placing in the top 10, meaning she was invited back to train to become a professional pit crew member.
I got that call back, I was excited, like, man.
And we're looking at what? 12-1 or 5, right?
She came to Concord to train with Phil Horton, the pit crew coach for Drive for Diversity, a development program for minority and female drivers and crew members. It was there she began her career as a tire changer.
That's the position that suits me the best. I'm short, I'm quick, I'm low to the ground, so that was like the perfect, Coach automatically knew, he's like, you're gonna be a tire changer.
Her job is to remove and replace the lug nuts on the tires as quick as possible. She worked on it day after day at Rev Racing in Concord and then at the Excalibur Pit School in Mooresville, not knowing the magnitude of what she was about to accomplish. In June of 2017, less than a year after changing her first tire in practice, she changed one in a Camping World Truck Series race, becoming the first African-American woman to pit in a NASCAR National Series race.
I mean, it's crazy. I'm glad I can be that example, for other people out there to, to be able to do, anything you put your mind to. And I hope, more people feel accepted. And if there's any other little brown boys, brown girls out there who want to, join the sport, I hope that they can look at me and, say, like, if she can do it, I can do it.
That brings us to February of 2018. Daniels is now in her second season and on the schedule to pit in multiple races this season. And the young woman who didn't pay attention to NASCAR 2 years ago has the NASCAR world paying attention to her.
Okay, so if you looked in the video right there, you saw a lot of different things. The jump roping, how many sit-ups you can do in a minute, push-ups. They had to run upstairs, 40-yard dash. There's a bench press involved. Usually the stronger guys carry the oil can. The shorter people may do tires. They find positions for everyone, and it's a very grueling workout. Like she said, sort of like the NFL Combine. So this is held in North Carolina every year. It's usually held at Rev Racing in Concord, which is an African-American owned racing company. They currently have a driver who was a student at Winston-Salem State, which is about an hour away. I live 15 minutes from Concord. It's between Charlotte and Greensboro. And if you look at Tobacco Road or Interstate 40 of the litany of historically black colleges and universities, NASCAR has been recruiting from them recently and getting people to go down to Concord. We'll talk about that a little later when we come back from break. Again, I'm Jamar Harp. This is Sports 101. Take a quick break and we'll be back to further talk about the African-American women pioneers in NASCAR.
Compassion, noun. Sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. We're all born with it. It's in us. Don't believe me? When you hear a baby cry, something pulls at you. You want to ease that pain. You want to soothe that hurt. No one had to teach you that. It's called compassion, and it's in you. However, at some point you turned it off when it came to me.
Me. The cries of my soul have gone unheard, but today, you will hear me.
My heart has wailed a melody loud enough to shatter your ears and you ignored me. But this week, you will hear me.
This body has beat the drums of anguish, only to be silenced. But this month, you will hear me.
This year,
this decade,
this century,
I will be heard. And
you will be the one to hear me.
And when I am finally heard,
show compassion.
Show compassion.
Show compassion.
Remember, it's in you.
Welcome back. I'm Jamar Harp, and again, this is Sports 101, the sports show that discusses beyond the X's and O's. We talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective, looking through the lens of history, past, present, and in the making. Again, make sure you get social with Sports 101 and SportsZone Chicago by following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now back to this week's topic, African-American women in NASCAR. The next woman I would like to profile is Melissa Harville LeBron. Miss LeBron is a 47-year-old single mother with 3 biological children, as well as her siblings, 4 kids. You can see her right here with 2 of her sons who are also NASCAR drivers. Miss LeBron started her career in the entertainment industry as an intern at Sony Music. In 2005, she left Sony and launched her own music label while working for New York City's Department of Corrections. Nearly a decade later, around 2016, she suffered a severe asthma attack that forced her into early retirement and inspired her to take the risk of launching a multifaceted entertainment company called WM Stone Enterprises. Her journey into auto racing began unexpectedly when she took her sons to a NASCAR experience event at the Charlotte Super Speedway. Her goal in taking her sons to this event was to persuade her sons not to enter NASCAR because it was such a dangerous sport. 2 of her sons were just enamored with NASCAR. So she thought by taking them to the event, letting them get in the cars and drive, it would be too fast for them. But that wasn't the case. Both of her sons did very well at the event and drove over 150 miles per hour at the experience and piqued their interest and eventually led her to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop her own racing team. After she explored the sport's history, she noticed its notorious lack of diversity, not only in drivers of color, but owners. So this motivated her more to be a successful owner and the first African-American woman to own a NASCAR team. She created E2 Northeast Motorsports under the umbrella WM Stone Enterprises to fund her NASCAR ambitions. E2 Northeast Motorsports became the first multicultural team to race competitively in NASCAR. The reason they were multicultural is E2 Motorsports has 4 Black and 4 Latino drivers. Well, and they race in the Camping World Truck Series, and 2 are in the Wheeling All-American Series. The 2 in the All-American Series are actually Miss LeBron's sons, Eric and Enico. Those were the 2 gentlemen standing with her in the picture on the track. Miss LeBron, she celebrated another victory on February 16th of 2018 when her team ran its first official race in the Camping World Truck Series at Daytona. So this is monumental because remember, your goal by being a NASCAR owner is to be able to race on the big weekend. So that's the weekend of the Cup Series race. So as we stated earlier, the first race will be the Truck Series, and then you got the Xfinity Series where you see some drivers that'll also race Sunday as well in the Cup Series. So being in 2018 to get on the Truck Series is an accomplishment, number one, because she's getting the millions of dollars of revenue from sponsorship and it's helping her build her brand so eventually she can reach the pinnacle, which is the Cup Series, and get the maximum exposure as well as monetary value from her team. E2 Northeast Motorsports was raced that week by Scott Stenzel, who made his return to the Truck Series following a 3-year hiatus. Remember, we talked about the Truck Series as a series for either up-and-coming drivers, elderly drivers on their way out, or drivers that are trying to bounce back. So he took a 3-year hiatus from NASCAR, and oftentimes they can come back because owners in the Truck Series want someone dependable that's not going to wreck their car or their investment. They have to build it again from scratch, and they want somebody that's ran the races before. So oftentimes older drivers will get rehired, or drivers that were fired from either the Xfinity or Cup Series. He came in 15th place at Daytona International Speedway, was also marks another great accomplishment because you get paid more from finishing the race. All these advertisers want their cars to be seen throughout the entire race on television, the top of their car and the sides. Now the advertising is going up to the front hood, as well as back panels, and the suits that the drivers are wearing are becoming more and more flamboyant and boisterous with these advertisers signage. So to finish the race was big because a lot of people get in these races and don't finish and get kicked out of the Truck Series, which moves them down and they lose sponsorship. Miss LeBron stated she wishes to see more become sports owners, particularly of NASCAR teams. It's important for our culture to push generational wealth to our children. It's important to lead by example. So her goal is to start this NASCAR team and leave it to her sons. And then hopefully they'll have some sons or daughters that strive to become drivers, owners, or pit crew. This is done similar with many other racing, as they call them racing families. The Petty, Childress, Earnhardt. It goes on and on. Most of these families are generational in the NASCAR scene. You also see the same thing in professional wrestling, which me and Maya briefly talked about last week, is a men's soap opera, which I agree, but people still watch it. Shout out to Big E. Our next example we're going to talk about is Breonna Daniels. Breonna Daniels, we showed a video on her before break, and here's some more pictures of her. As you just saw, Breonna is a former Norfolk State University basketball player, and now she's a NASCAR Cup Series tire changer. I want to say that again, Cup Series, not Truck, not Xfinity, Cup Series. She's the top of the food chain. In 2016, Breonna was a senior at Norfolk State University. They had been eliminated for the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference basketball tournament, and an individual from the athletic department suggested that she try out for the NASCAR pit crew drive for diversity program. At the tryout, she fell in love with the competitiveness and delicate hand-eye coordination needed to be a tire changer. If you can recall the video, the tire changers, the ones that slide in there, very reckless. They place that machine on them lug nuts to get it off as quick as possible. Someone else comes in and carries another tire, drops it on the nuts, and they have to squeeze it back on very tightly so that car can get out there in seconds. Now, obviously, this impacts the driver, so pit crews are judged the same way as drivers are. So for her to be a not only a woman in the Cup Series, but an African-American woman is phenomenal and is outstanding. A few weeks after the tryout, she was invited to join NASCAR's pit crew program following graduation. And obviously we see now that the rest is history. Daniels in 2019 became the first Black woman to pit in NASCAR's historic Daytona 500 race. She's continuing to break barriers in this historically white male-dominant sport as a tire changer on the number 51 Chevrolet Rick Ware Racing team in the NASCAR Cup Series. So again, what does a tire changer actually do? As this car comes in for the pit stop, again, everything is timed. So the tire changer slides in. There's two to a side. Well, actually, there's four, excuse me, because everyone has one tire to get it as fast as possible. They unscrew with the lug nut gun, and then someone else drops the tire in, and then they put new lug nuts and back on, and that car zooms out of the pit road. Speed in this change is critical, and this has to be done in seconds. She also helps carry and clean the tires, and each of these tires weigh about 70 pounds. These tires are specific for NASCAR races. They're a lot heavier because with these speeds are going on these embankments, with these steep inclines, you have to put a lot more rubber and tread to last for so many laps. Just think if you're going 500 laps, you're going to need to change your tires often, especially if they were just normal street tires. They would go a lot quicker. She's also last year Daniels won the crew member award at the 2020 NASCAR Drive for Diversity Award ceremony, and she received recognition for her work as an industry ambassador and trailblazer for women of color who want to break into NASCAR. She's also involved with the organization's National Pit Crew Combine, where she mentors and coaches aspiring athletes, oftentimes from historically Black colleges and universities, joining a program that jump-started her career. Next, we would like to talk about Tia Norfleet. Before I talk about her, again, my super producer, Maya Kai, and Greg have a video prepared that we would like to share that just delve a little bit deeper into Tia before we kind of conclude with her portion of today's show.
I've had the side eyes. I've had the, what is she doing? Where does she think she's going? Just being a woman, period, is already a hard job. So, being a woman in a male-dominated sport, it just allows me to bring out that inner beast, but gracefully. My name is Tia Norfleet. I'm the first African-American woman to be licensed in NASCAR and in ARCA. I got into NASCAR and racing from my dad. My dad actually was a NASCAR driver as well. He drove in the Truck Series. He tricked out my Barbie Corvette, and he put a car battery in it, and he put a radio, signal lights, everything like a working car. And the rest is history. It's crazy. A lot of people look at race car drivers as if they're not athletes. These cars are really heavy. The steering wheel is really heavy. The clutch is heavy. The brake is heavy, the gas is heavy. And when you're going at these speeds, the G-force that is hitting you is 4 times more than, normal. It could be 2-3 hours, where you're constantly going and you're constantly turning. The cars being strapped in so tight and not being able to move, you have this huge helmet on, you're stuck in this one position. It could be very uncomfortable. So you have to have enough strength to last the length of the race. Having PCOS has definitely played a major part in my life. I've always had a very irregular period, even when I first got it. And for me being a driver, I could be in a car and boom, I don't know when, where, how my period will come on. What I need is protection and just the assurance that I'm not gonna mess up my racing suit that costs $1,600. I'm not gonna be caught slipping. In the off season, I still try to keep up with my workout routine. The go-karting actually keeps skills up to par. It's like a little mini version of an actual race. You always want to keep the bread fresh because it can get stale real quick. Hopefully I'm empowering others just by my story and my dedication. When all else failed and everybody kicked me to the curb, I stuck with what I believed in and I kept fighting. What I stand for is something way bigger than me. So hopefully I'm someone that someone can look up to and say, you know what? She did it when no one else thought she would. She stuck with it to the end. She gave out before she gave up.
Again, that video is part of the One Woman series. That segment featured Tia Norfleet, who, again, we can talk about before we close out today's episode. Born in 1986, she had a strong interest in NASCAR due to her dad, Bobby Norfleet, who was a Craftsman's Truck Series driver. He never made it past the Truck Series, partly due to sponsorship at the time. There was no Drive for Diversity when he was driving. So obviously, but due to lack of sponsorship, he couldn't get Xfinity, or I think it was Nextel at the time was a sponsor of the Cup Series. So after he, as she stated, he souped up her Barbie Hot Wheels car, she kind of fell in love with racing, partly from being at races all the time with her dad. So she grew up competing in kart racing events, drag racing, and bandolero car racing competitions, and then moved up to kind of late model stock cars in 2004. At that time, Tia Norfleet became the first and only African-American woman to hold a NASCAR license, meaning she met all the qualifications and criteria to pay for a license to be able to be funded by a NASCAR racing team. She is also the first Black woman licensed by ARCA. That's the Automobile Racing Club of America. That's the parent company. So if you do any type of racing in automobiles, you have to be a member of that club as well. Think of it like the Screen Actors Guild. Tia Norfleet came to face her own challenges as a Black woman in NASCAR, having difficulty acquiring sponsorship, the key essential component to competing. Again, it takes millions of dollars per year to race, and backers weren't lined up to endorse Norfleet as one of their brand ambassadors. One of the reasons why is because they tried to claim that there were inconsistencies in her marketing and self-promotion efforts. They claimed that even though she was qualified and did race in NASCAR, she only raced that one low-level event where she ran one lap before parking her car. Now, this is not uncommon in the sport where ad sponsors will maybe pay for half a season, a whole season. That week, they may not want anything done to their car, so they just want you to start the race. Remember, you get a certain percentage of money for starting the race and a certain percentage for finishing. So this one or two laps and shutting it down has been done by various teams in the past and will be done in the future. It's done for multiple reasons to protect the car. It may be a younger driver or someone they're moving up from a lower series, and they just want to get the points for starting the race. Obviously, they won't get the points for finishing, but she was criticized for that. Also, she was criticized for having a criminal offense on her record. She's from Virginia, and I believe it was a minor fight or something she got into. And then being a black woman, they try to label her as aggressive or combative, but it's, a totally male sport. So again, that was asinine to me as well. And in the public records, she was 26, but she had, I think, wrote down one time that she was 24. And again, that's not a crime either. Oftentimes, the males, especially the younger looking males for marketing, they'll give an age younger than they are to attract younger female fans. Again, everything people do is about showmanship because not only they're athletes, but they have to put on shows and they go to do walkthroughs and different things in these, as she stated, $1,600 suits to gain attention. And again, this is something that's not uncommon. In addition, the NASCAR license she had received, well, she was the first African American woman to receive one. They try to say it's the kind any driver who wishes to acquire it can purchase it, meaning that it doesn't take talent to purchase that. It was just with money. So she was just derailed on so many different levels. And NASCAR came out and openly said they were upset that she was claiming to be a Nextel Series driver. And it wasn't that she was claiming to be a Nextel Series driver. She went to a photo shoot one time and they had a suit for her to wear for the photo shoot. And on that suit, there was a patch that said Nextel Cup Series. So she was doing a fashion shoot to promote that she was a NASCAR driver, but she wasn't in the Cup Series, but there was a patch on the uniform. So you can see how petty NASCAR was with her. They also tried to get her to kind of change her image. She was, I guess, too dark per se. What I mean by dark, not just mean her skin color, but she wore her hair in braids. She embraced her African-American heritage, not only in the way she dressed, but in her speech patterns and manner in general. And then backed by her dad said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to like whiten you up. Think of like in the movie The Five Heartbeats when they put the other group on the picture and it was someone else. So she wanted to be pictured the way she is, with her natural hair, the way she wears it. She didn't want to be toned down or toned up in magazine ads that take color off her skin. And ultimately, she only competed in one race in 2013 and kind of started losing sponsorship. Currently, Tia Norfleet supports the Safe Team Driving Georgia Academy program, where they have young African-American males and females, along with Hispanics, get driving instruction at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And this is a behalf on the Safe Team Georgia Driving Academy. And she's also ambassador for the program as well, where she goes out and represents and tries to attract people to the sport. Our final thoughts are, if you look at everyone that we spoke about today, everyone was a trailblazer and everyone took the word no and didn't know what it meant. What do I mean by that? When people tell you no in life, if you really want something, you work for it, My coach in college, Rob Broadway, used to always say, you push, you push, you push, and a turnover will finally happen. If it doesn't happen, push some more. So I wish more people would take the sentiments that Coach Broadway used to teach us and that these women have and made it through a sport where they were unwelcomed. Last year, we talked a lot about Bubba Wallace and the incidents he faced, but just think of being a Black woman in that same environment. So we have to be mindful of that. And again, when we teach our young men and women, let them know that sport is just not fixed to basketball, football, and baseball. There's a lot of things we can do. Simone Biles is a trailblazer in gymnastics. These women are trailblazers in NASCAR. So anyone that has a daughter out there, inspire them to be trailblazers in anything that they want. And just know with hard work and dedication, everything is possible. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Sports 101. Again, I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412. And make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of Sports Zone Chicago's other shows. Remember, Sports Zone Chicago is the only African-American owned sports podcast in the United States. Let's help make Sports Zone Chicago the #1 podcast to everyone. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at Sports Zone Chicago, and Instagram at Sports Zone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search Sports Zone Chicago, but most importantly, download the Sports Zone Chicago app. The Sports Zone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next week at 9 p.m. for another episode of Sports 101. Please have a blessed week.